There's a kind of silence that happens right before a family falls apart. You can feel it in the way they stop laughing together, in the way eyes avoid meeting across the dinner table. For years, the Browns built their world on faith, love, and unity. But somewhere along the way, the smiles stopped feeling real. Now, one truth has surfaced that changes everything. It was a truth so raw, even the cameras couldn't hide it. Because behind every happy family photo lies a story no one was meant to see. Stay with me. What happened afterward left even the most loyal fans speechless. Started small, almost invisible at first. A subtle shift in tone, a missing laugh, a hand that didn't reach for another. The Brown family had perfected the art of looking happy for years. Every family gathering, every interview, every smiling photo on TLC painted a picture of harmony, a modern, faith-driven family surviving the odds. But those who watched closely could feel something change. Christine's laughter did not ring out like it used to. Words couldn't veil the weight of what was said behind Mary's eyes. Janelle's calm seemed to hold something in, while Robyn came across as a quiet storm, one that held its breath as winds around her shifted. The fissures were coming. Slowly, silently, but surely. It wasn't one fight or one bad day. It was years of small disappointments piling up, like dust in the corners of a once beautiful home. When it first started, the show felt like an adventure. 4 women sharing their lives, trying to prove that plural marriage could work, that love could be divided but remain whole. And maybe for a while it did. There were moments, real ones, where the laughter actually was real. Birthdays, family dinners, road trips. You could see it in their eyes. They really did want this to work. But as time went on, the weight of trying to keep it together for the cameras began to show. Cody's energy, once full of confidence and charm, became sharp, defensive, and controlling. His words were shorter, his patience thinner. While he spoke a great deal about unity, his actions showed something altogether different: favoritism, distance, and frustration. Behind the scenes, the wives started to live more like neighbors than partners in the same marriage. Christine started to spend much more time in her kitchen, delighting in small moments with her children. Janelle busied herself with practical matters: finances, logistics, stability, anything that would prevent emotional chaos. Mary, on the other hand, withdrew into quiet reflection, hiding behind a polite smile that fooled fewer people each season. Then there was Robyn, the new wife, the one who was supposed to bring the family closer. But instead, her arrival exposed the unspoken truth. There wasn't enough love left to go around. Every plural family has its limits, and the Browns had reached theirs. It wasn't an explosive change at first. It was the kind of breakdown you only notice when you look back. The way the laughter in one scene feels forced, the way hugs are more about habit than heart. Fans noticed it, and so did the wives. But no one dared to say it out loud. 'Cause how do you admit that the dream which you built your whole life around is starting to fall apart? One by one, each of these women began to ask herself the same question. Quietly, privately, maybe late at night when cameras stopped rolling. Am I still happy here? And for some, the answer was already clear. Christine started to look at the family differently, not as a cohesive team, but a tangle of broken promises and invisible walls. Where once she had been a ray of sunshine, now a burden weighed upon her shoulders. You could see it in her eyes, a heartbreak that comes not from one argument but from years of feeling unseen. Meanwhile, Mary clung to hope as if it were a fraying thread. She wanted to hold on to the sentiment that Cody still cared, that one day things would revert to the way they used to be. But with each passing season, that dream slipped further and further away. This bond that once defined their marriage now became a ghost, something that existed in reruns alone. Even Janelle, who had always been so reasonable, knew deep down that the foundation was cracking beyond repair. She could balance the checkbooks, manage the kids, and smooth over the tension, but she couldn't fix hearts that no longer beat in rhythm. While Robyn tried to hold everyone together, her very presence became the symbol of division. It wasn't her fault entirely, but she represented a shift in Cody's heart, one which the others could feel even when he denied it. By the time the family realized how deep the rift had become, it was already too late. What once looked like strength, A husband with 4 wives standing together in unity, now looked like a man losing the trust of everyone who had ever believed in him. The smiles still appeared on camera, the laughter still echoed through the scenes. But if you listened closely, you could hear it, that faint, uneasy silence hiding behind the laughter. A silence that speaks volumes, saying, "Something isn't right anymore." Because sometimes the loudest warning isn't a fight, it's that quiet space between two people who've stopped trying to understand each other. And for the Browns, that was just the start of the storm. There comes a moment in every woman's life when pretending becomes heavier than the truth. For Christine, that moment didn't come with shouting or tears. It came in silence, the quiet realization that her happiness had become optional in a family she helped build. She'd spent decades supporting Cody's dreams, raising children, managing chaos, and keeping peace among 4 wives. Lately, however, something inside her had started to shift. She wasn't angry, not yet. She was just tired. Tired of the emotional gymnastics. Tired of trying to smile for a man who only looked her way when the cameras were rolling. It is always true that love does not disappear in one night. It gradually dwindles away until even the silence is heavy. When Christine stood alone in her kitchen, eyes distant and voice softer than normal, the cameras caught it. Something was breaking inside her. She was the cheerleader for years, the one who believed in Cody's vision even when it didn't make sense. But now her faith is slipping. Every time Cody belittled her feelings, every time he favored another wife, Christine's light dimmed just a little more. And yet she didn't lash out. She didn't fight to prove she was right. That wasn't Christine's way. Instead, she began to pull back, emotionally, spiritually, and quietly. She cooked alone, laughed less, and started to imagine what life might look like if she weren't bound by this endless circle of disappointment. With every quiet withdrawal, there is a scream nobody hears. Tension between them had been brewing over seasons. The affection that once laced their conversations had turned transactional, logistics about the kids, house plans, or filming schedules. There was no more warmth. Cody's eyes no longer softened toward her. His tone carried impatience instead of love. For Christine, the breaking point came when the kids started to notice. They could feel their mother's sadness, her need to be strong, though she was crumbling inside. That realization cut deeper than anything Cody had said. She didn't want her daughters to believe love was about settling for less. She didn't want her sons to grow up thinking a mother's worth depended on how much she could endure. So she made a quiet promise to herself: I will not spend the rest of my life unseen. The most dangerous kind of strength is the kind that grows in silence. When Christine finally confronted Cody about her unhappiness, it wasn't dramatic. It was heartbreaking. Her voice didn't shake out of anger but exhaustion as she asked him if he still loved her. His answer, or rather his hesitation, told her all she needed to know. In that instant, the illusion was shattered. All those years of loyalty, faith, and compromise suddenly felt like they were from someone else's story. Not hers. Not anymore. From that day on, Christine started living differently. She smiled more with her children and spent more time outside, rediscovering small joys that had nothing to do with Cody. It was as if she'd started reclaiming her own soul, piece by piece. But behind the strength was heartbreak, for leaving the only life you have ever known isn't just courageous, it's terrifying. Sometimes choosing yourself feels like breaking your own heart. As she packed her things and said her quiet goodbyes, the pain and the relief resided in her eyes. She wasn't just walking away from a marriage, she was walking toward herself. Cody couldn't grasp it, maybe he couldn't. It was a betrayal in his eyes, while in Christine's eyes it was survival. Their definitions of love had gone too far apart to meet in the middle anymore. Fans who watched that episode felt the emotional shift in an instant. Christine wasn't the same woman who had entered this marriage with hope. She was now the woman who'd finally learned that hope can't survive without reciprocity. With the closing of that chapter, the air surrounding the family changed. 'Cause it takes one person to find the nerve to turn and walk away, forcing everyone else to confront the reality they've been circumventing. For Christine, it was never about revenge. It was about peace, the kind of peace that comes only when you stop begging for love and start giving it to yourself. Her decision didn't just free her, it exposed every hidden fracture within the family. What began as her breaking point became the moment the entire plural dream started to unravel. And as Christine walked into the sunset of her new life, the rest of the family stood in the shadows of what used to be. After Christine had left, the silence around the Brown family became even louder. Still, for Mary, the silence was nothing new. She had been in it for a number of years. Long before Christine packed her bags, Mary had already been surviving in the shadows of a marriage that stopped being a partnership a long time ago. They were once inseparable, Mary and Cody, the original couple and the foundation for all others. That bond, once unbreakable, had slowly eroded into something fragile, just about unrecognizable. What used to be long talks and much laughter had now turned into short, careful conversations. The warmth was replaced by politeness and distance. Nothing feels lonelier than being married to someone who's already moved on. When viewers looked at Mary, they saw a woman who was trying to hold on to something that no longer existed. Her smile was rehearsed. Her optimism was stretched. But she refused to let go. Maybe it was faith. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe she just didn't know who she'd be without the story she'd been telling herself for so long. Her home became a reflection of her heart, neat, quiet, full of empty space. Every wall, every photo whispered memories of what used to be. She'd built this family from the ground up, helped bring each wife into the circle, and believed she was building something sacred. Now, she watched as the life she helped create drifted further away from her. Meanwhile, Cody had emotionally checked out. His interactions with Mary were colder, more mechanical. He frequently spoke of her as if she were some sort of far-off friend instead of the woman who once stood by his side through thick and thin. And in the most painful twist of all, he didn't seem to notice her pain anymore. It's one thing to lose love, quite another to realize the person who hurt you stopped noticing. Till Mary tried. She tried more than anyone else could. She clung to hope the way people hold on to memories of better days. She smiled in front of the cameras, laughed on cue, and told herself that maybe things could still change. But all along, in every silence, between all pauses and every unuttered word, was written the real truth. There's something so haunting about watching a person stay loyal to a love that no longer exists. And it was that made Mary's story so heartbreaking. She wasn't just holding on to Cody, she was holding on to the version of herself that existed when he loved her. The change in her eyes could be seen by friends and followers alike. It used to radiate assurance, and now it was tired, like she carried invisible luggage that she couldn't put down. Even when it came time to speak truth to Cody, his demeanor was icy and detached, as if her emotions were inconveniences, not pleas for understanding. Sometimes the cruelest rejection isn't loud, it's just quiet indifference. Behind the scenes, though, the dynamic changed. The other wives had their own frustrations, but Mary's pain was of a different kind. It was rooted in the history. She wasn't just any wife in the story. She was the first, the one who felt that she would always hold a special place. Realizing that she no longer did, that cut deepest. There were nights, Mary admitted, when she felt invisible even in her own home, when her laughter felt forced and her tears unwelcome. Yet she never let the world see her fully break. Strength for her wasn't about leaving, it was about surviving each day with dignity. But deep down, everyone knew survival isn't the same as living. And then, with Christine gone, the truth Mary had been avoiding began to stare her in the face. The hardest goodbyes are the ones never spoken aloud. As seasons passed, her role in the family became more symbolic than real. She was there, but not present. She smiled, but she was not happy. And each episode became a portrait of emotional distance, a woman sitting at the edge of a dream which no longer belonged to her. Fans who once rooted for her began to wonder the same thing she must have asked herself time and time again. Why does she stay? But only Mary could answer that, and perhaps even she wasn't sure anymore. Perhaps she stayed because hope is stubborn. or maybe deep down she knew that if she were to walk away, she would be giving in to the fact that the love story she once believed was over. Whatever the reason, her loneliness became the quiet heartbeat of the show. While others fought, argued, or left, Mary's pain was steady, silent, but ever present. 'Cause the strongest people are not always the ones that walk away, sometimes they're the ones who survive being left behind. And as her story continued to unfold, it became clear that Mary's isolation wasn't just about love lost. It was about identity, faith, and the human need to be seen, even when the world has already turned the page. After years of patience and quiet compromise, Janelle reached a moment she could no longer ignore. Coyote Pass property, which she helped build dreams around, had become a symbol of broken promises. Every delay, every message unanswered, every silent dismissal from Cody had piled on years of frustration. The woman who always held the family together had arrived at a decision point. Janelle was less angry than she was resolute. For years she had played her role to perfection, raising 6 children, managing her household, supporting the plural family vision, and extending to Cody the benefit of the doubt repeatedly. But the time for doubt was over. She finally understood that no amount of patience or politeness could make someone who refused to act suddenly act with integrity. Sometimes waiting for justice is just delaying the inevitable confrontation. Her attorney was selected with great care to represent her in high-stakes property disputes, and he quietly started gathering evidence. Every missed deadline, every half-hearted communication from Cody, and every unequal division of property and assets was being put into writing. The message was clear, the gloves were coming off, and the era of polite negotiations was over. Janelle's plan wasn't impulsive. Every step had been measured, every option considered. She had tried private resolutions, text messages, phone calls, and even subtle hints, all ignored. Now the only language left was legal, and she was ready to speak fluently. A patient woman pushed too far doesn't lose control, she redirects it where it counts. The stakes were huge. If successful, Janelle would be able not only to reclaim her fair share of the property but also bring into the light a system that for years had enabled favoritism to flourish. The delays that Cody had been requesting all along had not been accidental. They had been a strategy to keep control in hand. Now it was not about a plot of land. This is a crossroads about respect, dignity, and finally standing up for herself. In the run-up to the court battle, Janelle saw herself reflecting on decades of compromise. Jobs taken to support the family, personal dreams shelved, emotional energy poured into a household that didn't always give back. And in that reflection, a quiet fury simmered. The true cost of patience is not just waiting, it's the erosion of self-worth. Janelle considered her children as well. They had watched their mother through a complicated, often unfair marriage and had witnessed her quiet strength every day. But they also knew her frustrations, her heartbreak, and her unacknowledged labor. Her legal action wasn't just for her own sake. It was for them a lesson in standing up for what is right, even when it's hard. Every decision she made now carried weight. Every move had to balance strategy with principle. She wasn't seeking vengeance, she was seeking fairness. And as word of her intentions began to circulate quietly among family and insiders, it became clear the Brown family's dynamic was about to shift dramatically. When you finally stop waiting for someone else to do the right thing, you take the power back yourself. Janelle's crossroads also held in its wake the potential consequences for the others, Mary, Robyn, and even Cody himself. Each had a stake in the unfolding legal storm. Each would feel its ripples differently. Yet Janelle remained calm, measured, and focused. For once, the narrative wouldn't be written by Cody's delays or manipulations. It would be written by her courage and clarity. The legal move for her was not about the house or the money as much as about setting boundaries, taking control, and showing that the decades that had been dedicated to one family should be recognized. In those quiet moments, she thought about how this decision could affect her life and much more the legacy of fairness in the family. Standing up isn't about winning, it's about proving that you matter. And as the stage was set for what might well become the most explosive chapter in Brown family history, Janelle knew one thing with absolute certainty. She would no longer be sidelined, ignored, or silenced. Crossroads had come, and she was walking forward, not with anger but with undeniable resolve. Then there was Cody behind the closed doors of the Coyote Pass property, a man surrounded by papers, emails, and legal notices confronting reality he had long avoided. 4 years, delay, confusion, and silence had been his means of control. Property, family dynamics, even the perceived sense of fairness, all had been well managed to his advantage in life with Robyn. But now Janelle's attorney had changed the playing field entirely. For a moment, the usually confident Cody knew waiting wouldn't work this time. There were deadlines, legal filings, and a structured timeline that really were demanding action. No more delays. No more silent avoidance. Every decision, every expense, every favor shown to one wife over the others was suddenly under potential scrutiny. You can't manipulate silence when the law is forcing you to speak. He scanned the documents, noting that the legal strategy wasn't just about forcing property division. It was about transparency, accountability, and a full accounting of years of decisions. Every development choice, every tax payment, every improvement on Coyote Pass could be examined, challenged, and potentially overturned. The calm facade he had maintained for so long now felt fragile. Decades in the making, a plural family vision had been crafted by Cody that was seamless on TV and in public perception. Yet everywhere the cracks did exist: unequal property distribution, unbalanced financial contributions, and decisions favoring one wife at the expense of the others. Now those cracks were impossible to hide. Charm and influence are worth nothing when your secrets are exposed under the law. He thought about the potential repercussions. A partition sale could erase the big plan of the family compound. His idea of houses sited just so around Coyote Pass, an enduring monument to his patriarchal grip, might well disappear in an instant. No further negotiations, no opportunity for him to subtly influence a decision one way or another. The court would decide, and he would be forced to relinquish all claims. Financial pressure added another layer of anxiety. Property taxes on undeveloped parcels, the cost of maintaining multiple households, and the unclear status of income streams made the stakes feel enormous. Any misstep in disclosure could damage not only his finances but also his reputation as the family patriarch and visionary. The higher the dream, the harder the fall when reality intervenes. Even Robyn, long considered his partner in the family dream, was showing signs of panic. She had benefited from the messy property situation, her life smoothed by Cody's control and the legal ambiguity he fostered. But the legal spotlight threatened to expose just how much she had gained, and whether she had actively influenced decisions to favor herself. The stakes weren't just financial, they were personal and reputational. Gone were the strategy sessions dominated by calm certainty. Now tension and second-guessing punctuated each session. The math had changed. Every move needed to be considered in light of legal scrutiny, potential challenge, and loss of control over the narrative so tightly managed over the years. No amount of planning can outrun accountability whenever the rules are applied. Only in private conversations with advisors and confidants did Cody begin to acknowledge the depth of what he faced. The courtroom, the filings, the accounting, the discovery process, all of it a loss of freedom he had taken for granted. Decisions once easy were now fraught with potential consequences. The property he'd long considered his playground had become a trap of his own making. And yet, amidst the anxiety and pressure, Cody clung to hope. Hope that somehow he could still negotiate, influence, and maintain control. But the truth was clear: Janelle had shifted the balance. The patient, reasonable wife he assumed would always wait had turned into a force he could not ignore. Every calculation now had to consider her strategy, her attorney, and the inevitability of legal accountability. In the end, the rules are not yours to write anymore, but set by those whom you underestimated. What Cody did next would determine not only the conclusion of the property dispute but also the very legacy of his plural family. Every decision would impact the life of Janelle, Mary, Robyn, and the children in one way or the other, something that could never be taken back. The contrived silences, the favoritism, and the manipulations had finally met a force they could no longer ignore. A woman who knew her worth and demanded recognition, Mary Brown has often been the quiet observer in the drama surrounding Coyote Pass. Where Janelle has let frustration and determination boil over into the courts, Mary has tended to stay in the background, quietly managing her own life and her feelings about a plural marriage that ended years ago. Even in her silence, however, the property dispute has hovered over her, a reminder that the choices and manipulations of the past can still reach into the present. For years, Mary's name has been attached to one parcel of the Coyote Pass property along with Cody and Janelle, a connection that once symbolized shared dreams and the hope of a cohesive family. The reality has been anything but uncomplicated. With Christine gone, and now with Janelle's legal step, Mary suddenly finds herself in an increasingly complicated position. She's not at the front of the charge, but the legal tempest around her jointly owned land could force her hand and bring long-standing frustrations into sharp relief. And sometimes silence isn't safety, it's just waiting for the storm to hit. Mary has spent countless hours weighing her options. She's no stranger to compromise or the challenges of plural marriage, but the stakes now feel more personal than ever. If Janelle's attorney can successfully demand property division or a partition sale, Mary could finally gain the freedom she has long sought, but it may also expose uncomfortable truths about financial contributions, responsibilities, and the dynamics that have long defined her interactions with Cody and Robyn. Mary is cautious and has taken advice from her own advisors on how best to protect her position without creating unnecessary conflict. She realizes that the court will be concerned with issues of ownership and equity, not the emotional intricacies of the plural family. Here, her approach is straightforward: clarity, documentation, and judicious participation. Even with careful planning, the possibilities for disruption are great, and the emotional burden of revisiting decades-old arrangements is palpable. Freedom is often frightening when it finally knocks at the door. As the legal filings progress, Mary begins to realize the opportunity in Janelle's bold decision. Where she at one time felt tradition and loyalty had bound her hand and foot, the prospect of the formal property division represents a clean break and the chance to take back her autonomy. It's bittersweet. What she might have most feared some time ago has become the very key to independence. The interplay of emotions is complex. Watching Janelle assert her rights is empowering, yet it also brings painful reminders of what Mary has been through. The inequities, the sacrifices, and silent compromises of the past decades now come under scrutiny. How much of life did she bend to accommodate a system that favored others? And how much of her future could now finally be freed from those constraints? Sometimes justice comes quietly, but it changes everything. Mary also realizes that the litigation process will most definitely change her relationship with Robyn. For a long period, Robyn has enjoyed property arrangements devised for her comfort. Mary's guarded optimism is couched in the realization that these revelations can bring conflict, forcing the two women into hard conversations around fairness, responsibility, and shared history. Yet, even in the tension, Mary finds relief. The law doesn't bend for favors, emotional manipulations, or unspoken rules of a plural household. Deals in facts, ownership, and accountability, exactly what she's been seeking. As Janelle's attorney presses on, Mary watches closely, ready to step into the light of resolution when it finally presents itself. The quiet observer may finally become an active participant, and nothing will ever be the same. With Janelle now turning the wheels of legality, Mary's patience and preparation may finally pay off. The road to independence, until now obscured by a tangle of complexity and silence, is in clear sight. She is not driving the action, but she is ready to claim her share, navigate the courtroom, and perhaps feel untethered from the past for the first time. This is it, the moment years of waiting, watching, and hoping have all led up to. Janelle's legal action will finally bring the Brown family saga into the courtroom. For Cody, the threat of scrutiny has never been greater. He's controlled the narrative to date, using delays and silence to great effect. But today, formal legal deadlines set an impersonal pace. Every document filed, every subpoena issued, and every discovery request chipped away at the walls he has carefully built around himself. Control is a fragile thing when the law sets the rules. For Janelle, it's more than just a house or finances involved in the courtroom. It represents a platform for justice and recognition. She realizes that going in means a confrontation with decades of family history, favoritism, and broken promises. But she's prepared. Peacekeeper is now armed with facts, timelines, and law. With each evidence, each crafted document, her position gets stronger and sends an unequivocal signal to Cody that the days of his unilateral decision-making are well and truly over. Countdown is not only legal but also emotional. Janelle's attorney has worked for months, compiling a case that uncovers financial favoritism, property mismanagement, and a pattern of inequity. Pressure on Cody is immense. Any co-signed document, any missed communication, any discrepancy in the property taxes could be taken apart and scrutinized. And with Janelle's adult children urging her forward, the stakes feel like they've never been higher. Patience has its limits, and Janelle has reached hers. Insiders say the first hearings could expose more than perhaps anyone had bargained for. Complete disclosure of Cody and Robyn's finances, accounting for property expenses, and scrutiny of past decisions that may show the hairline fractures in the foundation of their carefully created family image. It's not only a legal fight, it's a light that's been placed on years of secrecy and unequal treatment. Robyn, who benefited most from the unequal distribution of the property, faces the uncomfortable reality that she could be drawn directly into the legal fire. Meanwhile, Mary watches closely, still poised on the sidelines but ready to act. The legal momentum created by Janelle's move may finally give her an opportunity to sever her ties to Coyote Pass entirely. Property dispute that once felt like a tangled, unmovable knot is starting to unravel, piece by piece, under the weight of legal scrutiny. When the gavel falls, nothing ever remains as it was. Court dates loom, and the air is electric around the Brown family. Every family meeting, every phone call, every text about the property is freighted with tension. Janelle has sent a clear message. Fairness will no longer be postponed. Cody must respond, negotiate, or face consequences that could redefine the family's legacy and his personal authority. For the first time in years, the other wives are watching him struggle without his usual tools of control. The courtroom is not simply a place where property disputes are mediated, it is a proving ground. Janelle's approach is both simple and powerful. Let the facts speak for themselves, let the law enforce fairness, and let the system reveal who has acted in good faith and who has not. The narrative that Cody has carefully cultivated, the one where he appears as a visionary patriarch and victim of circumstance, is about to collide with reality. When truth meets the law, it leaves no room for manipulation. This is the moment every Brown family member has anticipated, feared, or silently wished for. Countdown is real. Courtroom will not only decide on the fate of Coyote Pass but also the balance of power within the family. And as court proceedings get underway, every move is going to be monitored, every word parsed, and every decision considered. The stage is set, the players are in position, and for Janelle, the patient yet determined force behind the action, the first steps in the courtroom are only the beginning of what could be a life-changing reckoning. The fight in the courtroom is done, but the ripples are just beginning. Janelle's legal action has blown the lid off the Brown family, revealing fissures that have long been glossed over by a carefully managed PR presentation. Confident Cody, who once firmly clung to the reins of property and narrative control, now finds himself presented with an unvarnished reality he cannot change. Decisions have been made, documents vetted, and transparency imposed. And for Janelle, the victory isn't about pieces of land, it's about acknowledgement, dignity, and the confirmation after decades of sacrifice that her voice matters. Justice isn't always loud, but when it speaks, it changes everything. The first wave of fallout hits immediately. Property divisions clarified, financial responsibilities rebalanced, and for the first time, Robyn and Cody are made to account for the years of unequal treatment. What insiders refer to as a long-overdue reckoning brings into sharp focus not only what was decided but also why. Patterns of favoritism, deliberate stalling, and miscommunication now had a record and one impossible to ignore. The narrative that painted Cody as merely overwhelmed or acting in good faith began to crumble. Mary had sat on the sidelines, waiting and watching the drama unfold. For the first time, she sees a clear path to independence, as the legal momentum of Janelle gives her leverage to finally separate herself completely from Coyote Pass. taking back control over her financial future and the property she'd never wanted to share. What had seemed an impossible tangle of relationships and land ownership was now being unraveled with precision. Where there is one standing firm, others are emboldened. The emotional fallout, however, is just as significant. Janelle's daughters watch with pride as their mother asserts her worth, seeing firsthand the value of persistence and self-respect. For the family who grew up expecting women to silently endure, this lesson is profound. Meanwhile, Cody and Robyn are forced to navigate a new dynamic, one where they cannot rely on silence, delay, or manipulation to maintain control. Every decision is now under scrutiny, and every action has consequences beyond their personal comfort. As the dust settles, questions remain. How will this reshape relationships within the Brown family? Will new alliances form or tensions harden further? The verdict from the courtroom, the adjustments to property, mark a turning point but do not erase decades of complex emotions, past favoritism, or the memories of sacrifices made. Janelle has regained fairness, but the path onward is still complicated. Sometimes the hardest-won victories are the ones from which one learns the most. For viewers and fans of the series, the implications are immense. What was once a private family fight became, through the court ordeal, one of accountability, resilience, and principles. This shows that, even when the going gets really tough, taking a stand can affect change not just for oneself but for others similarly caught in webs of complexity and unfairness. The Brown family, as America knew it, will never be the same. The dreams of a cohesive plural family might have dissolved, but clarity, fairness, and self-respect now lead the way forward. And as cameras continue capturing every moment, this story becomes both a cautionary tale and a celebration of patience tried, boundaries asserted, and the quiet power of a woman who would no longer be sidelined. The legal move by Janelle may have nominally been about property, but its real substance lies in the unshakable value of integrity, principle, and the courage to demand rightness. In the end, fairness isn't just an aspiration, it's a statement that reverberates far beyond the courtroom. A saga that perhaps began in silence and avoidance ends in clarity, accountability, and renewed senses of empowerment for those who have waited so long to have their voices heard. Janelle's action ensures that no one involved or watching can ever forget what it truly means to stand up, speak out, and demand what is deserved.